I honestly don't know why I bothered. At no point in time did I ever think that I was going to enjoy this movie. It's not that I didn't want to. I would really like to like Star Wars again, but there was absolutely no indication that Dave Filoni would somehow turn the ship around after Mandalorian Season 3 and make a genuinely good film. Perhaps I thought I owed it to my channel's legacy. I did, after all, get my start talking exclusively about Star Wars right around when Season 3 came out. Or maybe it was that relentlessly persistent voice in my subconscious whispering, it might actually be a good time. I mean, the only other Star Wars movie I haven't seen in theaters, at least since I was old enough to go see them, was Solo, which no one else went to either. Whatever the cause, I found myself late on opening night in a movie theater seat, a bag of candy on my lap, watching the opening text pop up on screen. No crawl. They apparently reserved that for the Skywalker saga films. And it told me that the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda are hunting ex-Imperial officers turned warlords at the behest of the New Republic, supposedly so the fledgling government can get a handle on all this ex-Imperial activity. And yeah, the opening sequence is right along those lines. Oh, I'm definitely going to be discussing spoilers, just in case you care. And since the movie just hit theaters, I don't have much by way of B-roll for it, so when I get sick of looking at my face as I edit, I'll throw in some gameplay from Republic Commando or Jedi Fallen Order, because I love those games, and they're examples of how to actually tell a Star Wars story. Anyway, Mando blasts his way through a bunch of snowtroopers, commandeers whatever the Imperial version of an AT-RT is, and eventually takes out his target. I have some minor complaints about this scene, mostly in the form of bad guys always missing, but that's hardly new, especially in Star Wars, so it's all good. Although it did kind of annoy me that Mando himself never gets hit because he's wearing Beskar armor, which, as long as the blaster bolt doesn't find a soft spot, is impenetrable. You can have him tank a few shots, he definitely does in the show, and I think that makes things more interesting. Sure, he's faster and more accurate than his enemies, and that's cool, but he also wields a technological advantage, which they just didn't display as much here. But other than that, solid opening, except for the dialogue. The ex-Imperial shakedown of the local traders or businessmen or whoever they were was as basic as it comes, and that's a trend that will persist throughout the entire movie. And I know Star Wars, with the exception of Andor, has never had the most nuanced or complex dialogue, but you can tell no one really tried here. It's just functional. People say exactly what the movie needs them to say for the purpose of the plot, and that's as far as it goes. There's no flavor, no subtext, no hinting at deeper character motivations. But hey, at least we delivered on the opening promise of Mando going after the imps, which is then forgotten about by about the halfway point of the movie. See, Din is instructed by Sigourney Weaver's character, I don't know if she ever gets a name in the movie other than Colonel, to track down a mysterious ex-Imperial named Commander Coin, and to do so, he will need the cooperation of two particular Hutts, which he will earn by returning their kidnapped nephew, Jabba's son Rada, to them. Mando goes to Nal Hutta, meets the Hutt twins, and gets the name of the moon where Rada is being held, and then immediately leaves. That could have all been an email, but whatever. He then goes to the moon, finds Rada fighting in a gladiatorial circuit, and discovers that the young Hutt does not want to be like his father, does not want to go back home, and is instead looking forward to winning his freedom after his last fight, which will of course be tomorrow night. Now, I have to say, I did not care for Rada as a character at all. For one thing, I can't get over the absurdity of seeing him flop around in a combat arena, and I did not like it whenever any of the Hutts spoke basic. But his entire character was basically, screw you, Dad, which I find overdone and petulant. Sure, Jabba the Hutt was a bad guy, but why would his son think that? What was behind Rada's rebellion? Why would he forsake the criminal empire that was rightfully his when that was, assumingly, all he knew growing up? Also, dude totally kills a man by falling on him in his very first scene of this movie. It's not like he's a paragon of good morals. The movie, of course, doesn't remotely answer any of those questions, nor explore Rada's character beyond not liking his father, which is a giant waste because if you did, you could actually introduce the theme of legacy and what it means, what it might cost to accept or reject it. The young Hutt does, however, pose a dilemma for our hero. Does Mando return him to his uncle and aunt, who he says will probably kill him, or will Din set him free to live his life? And yes, Mando is very much written as an unequivocal good guy now. He says explicitly that he's done working for gangsters like the Hutts and wants to help out the New Republic, so this should be a test of his moral fortitude. it isn't. The movie robs itself of that bit of actual character work by having Rada tell Din that Janu, the crime lord who owned his contract, is in fact the mysterious Commander Coin. If you're thinking, that's awfully convenient, it won't be the only time. So, in the end, Din's decision not to return Rada to his murderous family isn't done out of a sense of justice, but is just plain practical, which would make sense for Season 1 Mando, but feels less satisfying now. But at least it was a smart decision, right? Well, not according to Colonel Weaver, who is quite upset at Din for having jeopardized the New Republic's relationship with the Hutts, which they've spent a long time building. I'm not kidding, she says that. Why? Why do you want a good relationship with a group of Outer Rim crime lords? Sure, you probably don't want to be at war with them, but who cares if you make the gangsters a little bit peeved? It's not like they have the assets to make that much trouble for you. They had to ask the New Republic to ask Din Djarin to extract their nephew. They couldn't even do it themselves. Well, except for the fact that they have a bounty hunter of their own who they send to capture Mando after he lets Rada free. Why not use that guy in the first place? Dude seemed pretty capable. It was right before this point of the movie, about halfway through, I think, that I was pretty checked out. Unsurprisingly, it felt like the end of an episode, the end of an arc, really, and I would have been more than happy to wait a week to find out what happens next. So before I continue running down the plot, let me complain about another tendency of modern writing that reared its ugly head in this movie: modern language. When Mando brings Coin back to base, he says he wants a lawyer present before answering any questions. I'm sorry, what? Like, yeah, sure, the various planets and cultures in Star Wars have legal systems, but that phrase is quite unique to our relatively modern common law system. That's something I expect to hear out of a drug dealer being interrogated in a police procedural set in West Baltimore, not from an Imperial officer turned mob boss who has just been captured by a dude in shining silver armor. These aren't huge complaints, admittedly, but they're symptoms of a disease that is absolutely rampant in fiction these days. Writers seem incapable of writing for the universe in which they are writing. All you Sanderson readers out there who experienced Wind and Truth, you know what I'm talking about. Characters slip into modern parlance or use 21st century aphorisms far too often nowadays, and every time it happens, it takes me right out of the story. Anyway, Mando gets captured by the Hunter, I think that's what they call him, who then immediately calls the Hutt twins via holo-Skype to confirm that they want Mando brought back to Nal Hutta. Why would he do that before he even boards his ship with his bounty? Why, so Baby Yoda and his even smaller alien friends can overhear the conversation and go to rescue Mando. Like I said, conveniences abound in this film. For yet another example, after Din is brought to the Hutt's compound bitten by a giant snake in this film's version of the Rancor scene, because all Hutts build their throne rooms above monster-filled pits, of course, and is slowly succumbing to the poison, the Hunter once again shows up, talks with a fisherman whom Baby Yoda befriended, and very helpfully tells him that the fugitive he is after has been bitten by a dragon snake, allowing the fisherman to immediately concoct an antidote from ingredients he has on hand and give it to Baby Yoda to give it to Mando. This brings me to a few more of the complaints I have. One, this sequence is interminably long. Watching this dumb little puppet hop around and pretend to do things, since it can't actually manipulate its environment, was boring beyond words. They should have had Baby Yoda start talking in Season 2 of The Mandalorian. I get that he's still young or whatever, but Yoda lived like 900 years old before dying of old age, which would make Baby Yoda at least 6 in terms of human years, so he should definitely be able to talk by now. What is he, Michael Scott?
He was 5 years old. Couldn't even talk yet.
Next on the list, we have Baby Yoda's insane inconsistency when it comes to his Force abilities. At least in the Obi-Wan show, he went from useless to Master Jedi in a straight line. It was absurdly rushed, but it was a sensible direction of progress. Remember the scene in Season 1 of The Mandalorian where Baby Yoda lifts a space rhino fully 8,000 times his own weight into the air? Yeah, well, now he's incapable of sliding a bowl of chips across a table at more than 2 feet per minute, except when he's not, like the time he dismantles a mouse droid with the Force, and then forgets he can use it and doesn't push a bunch of detonators out the open side of the AT-AT they've commandeered. What, did his Force meter run out? But don't you worry, when Din is jawing, Baby Yoda is able to close the wound. At least they showed some restraint and didn't let him just heal Mando outright. Though I kind of wish they had, because that would have skipped a lot of dead air. Though, to be fair, that time we spend with Baby Yoda while Din is passed out is, in a sense, thematically important. Now, this movie is devoid of pretty much all theme. It is largely just stuff happening and then more stuff happening. The only actual theme is that of the necessity of independence. A couple of people say quite explicitly that there will come a time when Baby Yoda will have to fend for himself. Din cannot be there forever. Boring as they are, those scenes of Baby Yoda taking care of Mando do advance that theme. It's not remotely paid off, of course. The two don't separate at the end. Disney's merchandising team would never allow that, as we saw when they just brought them back together at the beginning of Mando Season 3. But Din does bring Baby Yoda up to his lap in the cockpit and let him press a button on the console, so in terms of payoff, they've made a single monthly mortgage payment. It's something, I guess. To round out the rest of the plot, Din recovers thanks to the antidote, which I believe was named Contrive-A-Pin, and the pair embark on a rescue mission. They breach the Hutt's compound, blast a bunch of battle droids, and the Hunter and twins end up falling into the Not Rancor pit along with Rada, who is, of course, saved by Baby Yoda using the Force. The Hunter escapes through a side tunnel because I guess they want him to come back later, while the twins are assumedly killed and eaten by their giant pet snake. But victory is not yet won, oh no. See, there are more battle droids approaching, but luckily the New Republic has shown up with Sigourney Weaver at their head, and I'm pretty sure I saw Dave Filoni flying an X-Wing too, but I was quite tired at this point, so who cares? I'm confused as to what Colonel Weaver's role is within the New Republic, as she seemed to be in charge of, intelligence, but suddenly she's behind the stick of a fighter flying into an active combat zone. I guess it's a small organization, so she needs to wear a lot of hats. Or the producers just wanted Sigourney Weaver in an X-Wing, who's to say? Anyway, the rebels blow up the Hutt base, Din and friends jump out just in time, and everyone returns home to live happily ever after. And it was at this point of the movie that I realized I needed to check the rating, because I could have sworn it was PG-13, but so much of it is kept extremely PG. So that brings me to my last and one of my most unusual complaints. This movie has no spine or teeth. What do I mean by that? See, not one of the X-Wings or Y-Wings in the attack run gets shot down, despite the Hutts launching numerous fighters and having some serious anti-air turrets, which the movie makes sure the viewer sees when Din first arrives on Nal Hutta. Quite literally, no good guys die. This whole venture costs them nothing. Din can't even feel guilty that his going against orders, stupid though they were, led to comrades being killed, because none were. In an earlier scene, a bunch of monsters, who we are explicitly told are among the deadliest in the galaxy, escape the arena in which they are fighting Din and Rada and run rampant through the crowd and the streets of the city beyond. What, you might be wondering, do these monsters do when they get their hands on the soft flesh of a human? Feast, rip, tear, pull, and sever? Nah, they just toss people behind them and keep on running. Seriously, that's all they do, with maybe one mild exception. And I'm not advocating for more gore. I'm perfectly happy not seeing people chomped in half. But if you tell me that these creatures are the galaxy's most vicious monsters, it kind of wrecks the world building when all they do is chuck their would-be victims over their shoulder like Luke and the lightsaber, instead of, acting like vicious monsters. And on a more plot-related level, this movie has no teeth because it outright refuses to engage with the struggle mentioned in the opening text, the battle between the New Republic and the remnants of the Empire for control of the galaxy. I'm quite sure that no one in Lucasfilm wants to touch that mess, to try and explain how the First Order came to be, because somehow it happened is far more convenient and requires no thought to maintain. And after I finish talking, that's exactly what I will give this film. No thought. It was a movie. Kind of. It was really 2 compressed arcs of a TV show. It's not good. It's generic, bland, and boring. At the very least, it's inoffensive and kind of fun when the action is doing the talking, but it's not something I would recommend you go or bring your kids to. Would they enjoy it? Yeah, probably, but there are far better movies you could show them, and it wouldn't cost $87. Actually, I take that back. This movie is offensive. Not in a political or social sense or whatever, but in the very fact that it exists. The prequels, for as much as I dislike them for their terrible dialogue, incomplete character arcs, and abhorrent chemistry between Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen, actually try to tell a story that meant something. They are rife with themes worth exploring and reflecting on, and if you can do that and appreciate the awesome music, great lightsaber duels, etc., while also acknowledging their flaws, and if you like them despite said flaws, I'm cool with that. I'm happy you're happy. This movie, there's precious little to like. There's nothing to sink your teeth into. There's nothing to reflect or dwell on. It has barely an ounce of artistic vision and suffers from a dire lack of theme. It's just stuff happening. Baby Yoda isn't a character. He's just kind of cute. So if you actually watched and liked this movie, please tell me why, beyond it being fun or whatever, because All that means is it flooded your dopamine receptors for a couple of hours, and scrolling TikTok will do that too. Doesn't mean it's good or worth anything. I don't want to hate on Star Wars. I love Star Wars. I don't need every movie or show to be Andor. I don't want that, in fact, but surely we can do better than this empty, meaningless set of random encounters that ultimately led nowhere, right? Like, imagine how many Republic Commando sequels could have been made with the budget of this film. Come on, Disney. I'll forgive you for so much if you make a good follow-up to the original. I've got ideas. Give me a call. How is it possible that the Cal Kestis games have stories that are 1,000 times better than this one, and that's not even their main focus? And that's all I've got for this video. Thank you for watching. Please support me on Patreon so I can psychologically recover from seeing both this movie and Animal Farm in the same month.